Dear ERA-EDTA members, dear Congress participants, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure and honor to welcome all of you to this first ERA-EDTA Virtual Congress. I am very proud to share this digital version because despite what happened in the last few months and what is still happening due to COVID-19, we have been able to get through and make it real anyway. Of course, I cannot forget that this year the Congress should have taken place in Milan, the Italian city, symbol of progress and development. Yet today, for Italy and for the world, Lombardy is a reminder of difficult times. In our mind, it has become a symbol of struggle, resistance, sacrifice, and pain. This is a very hard challenge for everyone across the world. And I am sure you will forgive me if today my thoughts go to the Italians who fought against the virus and lost their life, but also to our healthcare workers who have been and are still in the front line in the fight against the virus. I am very touched to introduce you to this virtual event in a completely different way. Deciding not to give up our annual Congress and turn it into a special digital edition has been an act of courage as well as a bet. As a matter of fact, we made our best to put in place an outstanding scientific program that could still meet the expectation of the participants and satisfy the nephrology community. For this reason, let me thank Professor Peter for his continuous commitment as chair of the scientific program. But all this has been possible thanks to the entire Parmas team at the ERA-EDTA headquarters and the members of the council, the Congress Secretary, Professor Pier Giorgio Messa, and the president of the ERA-EDTA, Professor Carmine Zoccali, that have made an excellent work. The SARS-CoV-2 pandemic has changed everyone's lifestyles and behaviors, but above all, has forced us to adopt innovative and digital solutions to be able to cope with our daily and working life. Technologies have become more and more sophisticated, and the entire world is committed to follow the latest technological developments. Therefore, this health emergency has just accelerated a process that was already underway. I am very excited to kick off this event because I am sure that it will be the starting point for change, also in the field of medical education. These days will be important for each of us because we will test a new way of sharing experiences, results, and the future perspectives of our specialty based on new evidence in nephrology in general, and in particular in relation to the coronavirus. In fact, the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic has spotlighted the importance of our specialty since the virus has been proven to be renotropic, and we know that it causes kidney injury. albuminuria, and elevated creatinine levels occur early on in the course of COVID-19 disease, and many intensive care patients suffer acute kidney injury, with over a third of them requiring dialysis. Nephrological expertise is of the utmost importance in this situation. Moreover, the renal condition that can subsequently arise are not yet foreseeable, so the issue of nephrological aftercare also needs to be addressed. So today, before starting, I am glad to share with you some numbers about our Congress that underline the good job we have done so far. First of all, with regard to the scientific program, because despite the many challenges, about 90% of what was put in place for Milan has been confirmed. Therefore, you will enjoy 4 plenary lectures, 40 symposia, 34 free communication sessions, 3 special sessions, 1,200 e-posters, and 60 moderated posters. It will also be possible to experience virtual exhibition thanks to 36 companies involved in the multi-channel digital activities. You won't miss as well the 20 symposia focusing on the current most interesting topics of clinical nephrology, 2 of them dedicated to COVID-19, with the possibility of sharing information and identifying joint fields of research. I am also truly proud of the number of the participants. Until now, 5,115 from 106 countries around the world. More than 2,000 participants have booked our CEPD courses. This is a very impressive achievement for this 57th edition of the Congress. That is the special digital one, and I really appreciate all the effort made to put all this together. I hope you can experience the best virtual Congress you could have ever imagined, while waiting to be able to join the 6th edition in 2023 in Milan, sharing spaces, special atmospheres, and that special something that only real life has in store for us. Welcome and enjoy our fully virtual Congress.
We live now in a pandemic era, the COVID years. Large gatherings like medical congresses have been suspended. Our society believes that there should not be vacuum years and has therefore taken the challenge to maintain the traditional annual gathering of European and non-European nephrologists in the form of a virtual congress. This is a challenge because congresses maintain an osmosis with the place where they are being held. Paris, London, Madrid are all vibrant cities, and their vibrancy can be perceived at their congress centers. A virtual congress is a congress nowhere, is a meeting in the web universe, an enormous opportunity for connecting with a large number of scientists, but not a physical place. This year, the Congress was expected to be in Milan, a city of culture, industry, commerce, and art, which is one of the most advanced on a world scale. While this year our Congress will be electronic only, the appointment with Milan is only postponed. The live Milan Congress will be in 2023. This is the last year of my presidency, and it is therefore my duty to briefly summarize the undertakings of the Council during the past 3 years. To gain efficiency and maximize interaction, the Council restructured the organization of the ERA-EDTA activities under 2 branches, the Clinical Governance Branch and the Renal Science and Administration Branch. A detailed account of the rationale of this reorganization was described in a document by the Council which was published in NDT. The Clinical Governance Branch includes the registry, the educational activities of the same registry, and the European Best Practice Committee. To these committees, we added a Nephrology and Public Health Committee, whose mission is that of proposing a scenario for the growth of clinical nephrology research in Europe. The committee produced an articulated proposal that you may have read in NDT that I'm sure will be useful to help furthering clinical research in Europe. The second branch is the Renal Science and Administration Branch. This includes the Scientific Advisory Board, the coordination of working groups, and a Continuous Education and Professional Development Committee. Within this branch, we stimulated the SAB to build and coordinate an ambitious, large-scale project that may compete for funding by the European Commission. Thanks to the talent and the efforts by Gianni Capasso and Karsten Wagner that involved several experts of various disciplines, a project aimed at investigating the complex links of the kidney and the brain and the clinical relevance of these links was built. The project was successfully submitted to the European Commission, and 2 months ago, the European Commission awarded cost action funding for the creation of an integrated network of investigators specifically recruited for this project. An additionally important new initiative of this branch has been that of facilitating interaction among the ERA-EDTA working groups. To this scope, a new event was launched, the Scientific and Education Interaction Day, and the first edition of this new event was held in Vienna last October. Furthermore, the Council has invested on young nephrology, maintained solid links with the national societies, and started important collaboration with other kidney societies. Let me comment these activities. The Young Nephrology Platform was created 6 years ago by the past president of the ERA-EDTA, Professor Andrzej Widzek. The Young Nephrology Platform has grown during the past 3 years because the involvement of the young has now been extended to all activities of the societies. The visibility of the young and the participation of the young in the building of the ERA-EDTA program has been implemented, and the number of young speakers at our main Congress is now very robust. National societies are the very basis of the ERA-EDTA. We maintained periodic contacts with the presidents of the national societies to promote collaboration and to receive suggestions by them. I know that the new president and the new council will multiply efforts for making this collaboration more incisive and effective. And let's move to the relationship with the major kidney societies. The ERA-EDTA has collaboration with international kidney societies like the ASN and the ISN. The scope of this collaboration is to focus on major issues in the fight of kidney disease on a world scale. In this respect, the societies joined efforts in producing for advocacy and communication a simple single number that may translate the burden of chronic kidney disease. This number is 850 million, an enormous burden. In addition, the three societies are advocating for involved kidney patients in clinical trials. And the Council also directly focused on this problem by producing a special article in NDT. CKD should be no more children of a lesser God. They should be in the future increasingly included in clinical trials. Kidney disease is not only an enormous public health burden, it is also a cause of growing concern because of the high mortality of CKD. CKD is projected to be the fourth cause of death in 2040, in just 20 years. Therefore, funding kidney research is fundamental. For advocacy for funding kidney research, the ERA-EDTA Council decided to strengthen the existing link with European Kidney Health Alliance, an alliance that the ERA-EDTA helped to create about 10 years ago. Furthermore, in 2019, the ERA-EDTA joined the Biomedical Alliance, an alliance of over 30 scientific societies that effectively collaborate with the European Commission in the process of renal research funding and medical research funding in general. As you may understand, kidney research is at the center of the discussion of the ERA-EDTA Council. There are challenges and opportunities, and these challenges and opportunities were discussed in special articles in EDT, which was published early on this month. The cost of renal research is very high and is beyond the possibilities of the ERA-EDTA to fund renal research. Nonetheless, the Council felt that to help kidney investigators, a special effort can be made. That is, to award seed funding on a competitive basis for project framing and consultancy. And these awards will be reserved to kidney investigators that produce valuable projects to be submitted to the European Commission. Over the past 3 years, the ERA-EDTA has grown and it has been consolidated. The society has now a more agile structure that facilitates internal and external interaction, collaboration among officers, counselors, and members. The educational activity have been increased and diversified. And as I emphasized in previous slides, advocacy for kidney research funding has been set as a priority for our society. It is the moment to thank the many persons with whom I had the pleasure and the privilege to collaborate. Monica Fontana, a dedicated superb manager that is guiding a profound managerial restructuring of our society, and the international team that runs the various activities of our society. I cannot close without thanking the Council members one by one, by name. The Secretary-Treasurer Ivan Riklik, the Officer Danilo Flieser, Ziad Massi, and Denis Fouque, the three ladies of the Council, Annette Brookfeld, Maria Soler, and Kate Stevens, and then Dimitri Goumenos, Peter Blankstich, Mario Cozzolino, and Ron Gansevoort. And I have to add Goces Pasowski and Gianni Capasso that sat in the Council for 2 years during my presidency, and Mustafa Ricci and Jolanta Malisco that worked in this Council for 1 year. Last but not least, of course, the new President Christoph Wanner. He is a clinical scientist respected worldwide and has fresh ideas on how to advance the ERA-EDTA, and I have no doubt that European nephrology will thrive under his leadership. Thank you for your attention. Now it's the moment for me to thank Professor Loreto Gesualdo, the president of this fully virtual ERA-EDTA Congress. But Professor Gesualdo will be also co-president of the 2023 Milan Congress. Thank you very much, Tino.
It has been my great pleasure and honor to be the president of this fully virtual Congress. I thank the president, Professor Carmine Zoccali, and the council. But let me say that I am very proud of my society, the ERA-EDTA. Thank you.
The president of the scientific committee of the ERA-EDTA Congress has been Peter Blankstich. He infused fresh ideas and innovation in the Congress program, and this innovation fits perfectly the virtual nature of the Congress we are having this year. Thank you very much, Peter.
Yes. Yeah, okay, thank you. Well, first of all, I would like to thank the Council in the confidence that they had in giving me this task. I would like to express my thanks to all members who have submitted ideas for this meeting, to all who have accepted our invitation, and of course to the Parma office, who did a tremendous job in organizing this meeting. Thank you all.
Established in 1982, the honorary membership to the ERA-EDTA is presented to individuals who have made outstanding contribution to the advancement of renal science and to the clinical practice of nephrology. The honorary membership has been awarded 21 times in 38 years, and the awardees include scientists of the caliber of Kolf, Scribner, Sheldon, Cameron, and Reitz. This year, the ERA-EDTA Council decided to award the honorary membership to Professor Andrew Levy, Emeritus Professor of Medicine at Tufts University School of Medicine in Boston. Dr. Levy made a major contribution in patient care, research, clinical practice, guidelines, training, and the healthcare policy related to chronic kidney disease. His research spans a wide range, including serving as principal nephrologist co-investigators of the modification of diet and renal disease study, a study that produced fundamental contribution to the whole area of clinical nephrology. He used this large database to develop an equation to estimate glomerular filtration rate from serum creatinine. He also led the National Institute of Diabetes and Digestive and Kidney Disease effort to pull databases from studies to develop equations based on creatinine, cystatin C, and other filtration markers. The use of GFR equation to estimate kidney function and to inform prognosis are literally transformed research and clinical practice in CKD. Overall, Dr. Levy literally invented the concept of CKD, which has had a profound impact in the epidemiology and in clinical management of kidney disease. For the foregoing, I'm pleased to award Andrew Levy the honorary membership of the ERA-EDTA.
Thank you, Professor Zoccali. I am honored to receive the honorary membership in the ERA-EDTA. I would like to thank the members of the council and also to congratulate the other awardees at this meeting. I would also like to take a moment to acknowledge my collaborators and colleagues at Tufts Medical Center in Boston in the Chronic Kidney Disease Epidemiology Collaboration and the Chronic Kidney Disease Prognosis Consortium. It is these people to whom the credit is due for the award that I receive. Thank you again.
This year, the ERA-EDTA Award for Outstanding Basic Science Contribution to Nephrology goes to Professor Paola Romagnani. Paola has identified renal progenitor cells in adult kidney and demonstrated their capacity to generate novel podocytes as well as tubular cells in mouse and human. She has characterized the renal progenitor response during glomerular disorders after acute kidney injury and in renal cell carcinoma, unraveling the pathophysiology of several kidney disease and identifying a novel promising therapeutic target. No one more than Paola deserved this award. And here the plaque and the certificate that go with the award to Paola Romagnani.
Okay.
Thanks to the ERA-EDTA for this great honor. I feel to take on behalf of the extended group of collaborators working in my lab at the University of Florence and at the Mayer University Hospital. I would like also to thank my father that teach me the beauty of science, my mentor, Mario Serio, and all those nephrology colleagues that acted for me as role models and from whom I keep learning every day. Thank you.
The award for outstanding clinical contribution to nephrology goes to Professor Kitty Jagger from the University of Amsterdam. Kitty Jagger is the director of the ERA-EDTA registry, and over the years she has raised the registry to a true school of education and research, which is appreciated worldwide. Under her guidance, valuable studies have been carried out in the clinical epidemiology of chronic kidney disease and in the in general epidemiology of end-stage kidney disease. Her research has focused on the prevalence and progression of CKD and the frequency of kidney replacement therapy with focus on international and sex differences, as well as on the relationship of public health aspects and nephrology practice patterns with patients' outcomes. And this is the plaque and the certificate that go with the award to Kitty Jagger.
First of all, I would like to thank the Council and the Scientific Advisory Board for this tremendous honor. I would like to extend that gratitude to our chairman, Douglas Briggs, Carmine Zoccoli, Christoph Wanner, and Ziad Massi for their help in developing our work and a very pleasant collaboration. And finally, to my colleagues in the registry that have contributed so greatly to our joint work. Thank you.
ERA-EDTA Award for Research Excellence in Nephrology is a newly established award of our society. And the first award goes to Professor Alberto Ortiz Arduan. Alberto is probably the most productive investigator among his age peers in Europe. His research covers a vast area of knowledge and include CKD, cardiovascular injury, CKD, apoptosis and inflammation, and other themes. Alberto is the editor-in-chief of the Clinical Kidney Journal, and the effectiveness of his editorship is testified by the first impact factor received by the journal, 3.9. And these are the plaque and the certificate that we award to Alberto Ortiz Arduan.
Thank you. Thank you. I thank the ERA-EDTA for this award. However, research is not a lone activity. To do research, you need guidance and you need teamwork. Looking back, I think I never took a career decision in my life. As a medical student, my father, a nephrologist, told me research was important and recommended I join Jesus Ejido's lab, which I did. At the end of my nephrology fellowship, Jesus Ejido told me to go west to the Philadelphia lab of Eric Nilsson, which I also did. Back to Spain, I received the guidance of Jesus Ejido, Carlos Caramelo, and later of Carmine Zoccoli. I thank them all for the support. I also thank members of my lab and nephrology department at Fundación Jiménez Díaz in Madrid who actually did the work, as well as national and international collaborators. Finally, I will mention the influence of Professor Alberto Tejedor, who recently fell victim to COVID-19. Thank you very much.
The Stanley Sheldon Award is dedicated to the well-known master in nephrology. This award is designed to be an acknowledgement to young investigators who stimulate the dialogue between education and research. The awardee receives the prize of 10,000 euro. The Stanley Sheldon awardee this year is Martin de Borst. Martin de Borst is consultant nephrologist and adjunct professor of medicine at the University of Groningen. His research is focused on cardiorenal medicine. He has published over 160 peer-reviewed articles in leading scientific journals, and his work is embedded in several national and international research consortia supported by the European Commission, and he is co-principal investigator of several multi-center clinical trials. And I am happy to present Martin de Borst the certificate and the plaque. And last but not least, the 10,000 check that goes with this special award for the young.
Thank you, Professor Zoccali. It's a tremendous honor to receive the Stanley Sheldon Award for Young Investigators today. First of all, a big thank you to my fantastic students and co-workers, without whom this would never have happened. I am also deeply grateful to my mentors, in particular Professor Gerjan Navis, who fueled my enthusiasm for kidney research. The great examples of our mentors set the stage for a new generation in nephrology. I would like to thank ERA-EDTA for increasingly involving young nephrologists in its organization, allowing us to rapidly learn, develop, and build strong international collaborations. Finally, I want to thank my great family for their support. You have made this all possible. Thank you all very much.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, this picture has been the first page of this year's Congress website for more than a year. It shows you the Milan Congress building and the theme of the Congress. One thing has changed, but the other did not. The European Commission has announced that the transition to a sustainable society is one of its top priorities for the coming many years. The changing environment has an increasing and often detrimental effect on health, also including the kidneys, while the healthcare sector itself is a major polluter and a user of energy and resources. For that reason, the Council of the EDTA had decided to put this subject on the agenda and to define how the organization, its partners, for instance, the industries, and its members could contribute to the transition to a sustainable society. In this meeting, several sessions will be specifically addressing this topic. Ladies and gentlemen, nobody can introduce the subject. So next slide, please. Nobody can introduce the subject to you in more detail than the next speaker. I'm very happy to introduce to you Dr. Nick Watts. He is the Executive Director of the Lancet Countdown Tracking Progress on Health and Climate Change. This is an independent and multidisciplinary research collaboration between academic centers around the world. It is based in London, University College in London's Institute of Global Health, and is a continuation of the 2015 Lancet Commission on Health and Climate Change. The countdown tracks and drives progress towards a world which is responding to climate change in a way that protects and promotes public health. Dr. Watts is a medical doctor and was trained in population health in Australia and in public policy in the University College in London. He works to engage the health profession, so that's us, on the links between climate change and public health, having founded both a Global Climate and Health Alliance and the United Kingdom Health Alliance on Climate Change. Nick, it's really my great pleasure that you have accepted our invitation to give this special lecture in the opening ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Nick Watts.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Hi, hello. Thank you very, very much for having me. Peter, thank you so much for the kind words, for the introduction. Thank you to ERA-EDTA. It's a great pleasure to be here with you. I'm sad that we weren't able to meet in person, but there will always be next year and the year after that and the year after that. Peter, that was a very kind introduction you gave. The one thing that I think perhaps could do with a little more emphasis that should be clear to everyone immediately is that I am very Australian. So if you are unable to understand my accent, I'm incredibly sorry. It's a problem that we have down in the southern half of the world. There's not too much I can do about it, but perhaps we could send through some written comments towards the end. We have about 20, 25 minutes, not too much time, but we have a little bit of time to talk about the links between what I think is the biggest global health threat of this century. It interacts with the spread of infectious disease. It interacts with extreme weather events. It interacts with mass migration, with poverty exacerbation. It interacts with every single aspect of clinical practice. It interacts with the broader social, environmental determinants of health. We need to talk about the links between climate change and public health. And I'm going to do a thing, I think, back when I was in medical school in Western Australia, the kidneys are very complex, no? I'm sure everyone here will probably disagree. But back when I was in medical school, the kidneys always felt very complex. And we had a nephrologist, and he was giving us a lecture, a 2-hour lecture. And he said, listen, you're probably not going to understand the vast majority of what I have to say because the kidneys are very complex. So let me simplify it for you. Let me just give you 3 key messages, 3 key things to take home, and we'll put that in the exam and you can forget everything else. And I thought that was clever. The human symptoms of climate change, they are unequivocal. They are affecting every population around the world, and they are happening today, not in 2100, not just to polar bears and not just to populations a long way away, to every single person. No country is immune. Second, we have known this for a long time. We have known this for about 3 decades, and the world broadly has done nothing to respond. There has been delay and there has been inaction, and that delay and that inaction, that has cost lives and livelihoods. And number 3, just in the last couple of years, there are reasons for optimism, reasons for cautious optimism. And when you look closely, you will actually find that a lot of those reasons for cautious optimism, they lie with the health profession. They lie within the work that clinicians are doing around the world, within health associations, within the organizations like ERA-EDTA, the impressive work that's happening everywhere. Impact, delay, optimism. Those are my three messages, okay? As we talk through, I'm going to be talking, drawing almost entirely off data from a collaboration I work with, the Lancet Countdown. All of our data, I promise you, is freely available. We are a collaboration of far, far too many universities, 35 or so, scattered around the world, a couple of UN agencies. We draw together the world's leading experts on the links between health and climate change. We do a really, really simple thing. We want to put a finger on the pulse of the planet. We want to understand the ways in which climate change is impacting human health, and we want to understand the ways in which the response to climate change can protect human health. So, in response to a health crisis, what do? Obviously, you produce reports, right? We produce reports, they go in the Lancet. They're very, very simple publications. We track 41 different indicators of the links between public health and climate change. It comes out once a year, just before the UN climate change negotiations, because we don't think that climate change is just about 2100. It's not just about polar bears, and it's not just about a country a long way away that nobody cares about, like New Zealand. Climate change is about communities today, and the people standing next to us. Is tangible. It's things we can feel. It's things that we can see and touch. And we produce data. I'm going to have quite a lot of data, quite a few slides flying up over the next couple of minutes. If you either can't see this because we're moving too quickly, or if you can't understand my accent, then I apologize, but all of our data, it's freely available online, and you can go in, you can take a look, and you can figure out the links between health and climate change in your country and sort of compare against other countries. Okay. It's really very simple. The human symptoms of climate change, they are unequivocal, they are potentially irreversible, and they are affecting populations around the world today. No country is immune. A child born today is going to grow up to live in a 4-degree world without further action. Now, we have no idea what a 4-degree world looks like from a public health perspective. We sort of know what it looks like from a climatological perspective. But if you go and ask a doctor, if you ask a nurse, if you ask a public health professional, what does 4 degrees of average warming mean for the public health? They couldn't tell you. But what they could tell you is that our health systems were built with stability in mind. They were built for a stable climate. And when you start to shift that out from underneath a health system, underneath a clinician, that's where trouble starts to arise. And so in terms of the kinds of trouble that we might be talking about, we're talking about shifts in extremes of weather. And by extremes of weather, this is either storms, it's floods, it's droughts. The data are up on the screen there. Here, this talks about heat and heat waves. In 2018, we saw an additional 220 million vulnerable people exposed to extremes of heat. Some of the data that's just been submitted to the Lancet for our latest report coming out in a few weeks, it was submitted just recently. We reckon those 220 million exposure events, they translate into 290,000 additional deaths. Those deaths, they show up in the form of exacerbations of congestive heart failure. They show up in the form of kidney disease, because that's what extremes of heat do to populations that are particularly vulnerable, people aged over 65, people engaged in outdoor labor, where they don't have a choice. You see 133 billion work hours lost in 2018 at the same time. Now, if you look at that map, you'll see where those work hours are concentrated across India, across Pakistan, across China, but it's not to say that they're only there. We also see the whole way across Europe and indeed the United States, the effects of extremes of heat on people's health. If we turn our attention very quickly away from extreme weather into something a little bit more stable, and here what we're seeing is the impact of thermal shock and precipitation shift on crop yield. Crop yield for maize, for winter wheat, for soybean, and for rice, we see a decline somewhere between 2 to 6%. It depends on where you're looking. But what is really important is I'm not talking about 2100 and I'm not talking about 2050. If you look closely at the y-axis along that graph there, this goes up to 2018, goes up to 2019. We're talking about present day changes that we are starting to see already in terms of this. And when we project that forward, what we expect to see into the future, an additional 7 million children under the age of 5 stunted and malnourished as a result of climate change by 2050. In sub-Saharan Africa alone, an additional 9 million children in Southeast Asia. And so you go from extremes of weather, heat, flood, drought, you take the effects of malnutrition and crop damage, and then spikes and spread in infectious disease. Anytime that you can imagine a pathogen, a vector, being affected by temperature, being affected by precipitation, climate change is likely going to shift the burden of that disease. It's not necessarily going to increase it, but it's going to have an impact. And what we know, again, is that health systems, they were designed for stability. This is a graph of the vectorial capacity for the transmission of dengue fever. We see, in fact, that 2017 was the second most suitable, climate suitable year for the transmission of dengue. And we track dengue, but we also track malaria. We track Vibrio. We track a few different species of Vibrio. Chikungunya you can track in the same method. And everywhere you look, you see the climate suitability for the transmission of these infectious diseases drastically rising over time. Again, up to present day. The human symptoms of climate change, they're unequivocal, they're potentially irreversible, they're affecting populations around the world today. Number 2, we've known this for 2 decades, we've known this, I think, for 3 decades. The delayed response to climate change, it has jeopardized human life and it has jeopardized human livelihoods. Here I'm only going to show you one graph to communicate that point because I want to get onto the positive side of the story as well. This graph here tracks the carbon intensity of the global energy system. This is how carbon intense our power generation systems are. There's lots and lots of things flying around there, and the key may not quite be as clear as we would want it to. But what I'd like you to focus on is just one piece around the middle there. It's the black dotted line you can see from 1990 through to present day, it's basically flat. For the last 30 years, the carbon intensity of the global energy system has remained basically flat. Now, that masks a few important trends. We can see Western Europe has decreased, and indeed the United States have decreased the carbon intensity of their energy system. But at the same time, that is being counteracted by changes in Southeast Asia, by changes in the West Pacific. This is China and India mostly, and it's mostly the result of coal-fired power plants. There are important trends underlying here, but what is I think most notable is that that black line is flat, and that bar graph along the back there, that's total carbon emissions. It just keeps going up. We've known about this for 30 years. So there's a reason for optimism. There's it's got to be cautious optimism. I like to think of them as glimmers of hope. It turns out that child born today I talked about, the kid that has to grow up in a 4-degree world where we don't know what that world looks like for that child, it doesn't actually have to be that way. And the reason for that is if you go and you ask a climatologist, if you ask an economist, if you ask a hydrologist, an engineer, and you ask them to sit down and come up with all of the different things that they would like to do to respond to climate change, and if I presented all of them to this group here, you would tell me, Nick, those aren't responses to climate change. They are not mitigation and adaptation interventions. They are just common sense public health interventions. To me, you're talking about cleaner air. You're talking about more livable cities. You're talking about healthier diets. You're talking about more sustainable healthcare. You're talking about making sure that we are restructuring the way that we think about our clinics and our hospitals in a way that is not only good for patient care, but is also better for the environment so that we can do a better job of caring for our patients today in 2020, but also into the future. It turns out that when you take it as a whole, the response to climate change, it has the potential to be the biggest global health opportunity of the 21st century. And we are starting to see some shifts in just a couple of key areas. We are starting to see important shifts in the power generation sector. We're seeing the phase out of coal-fired power around the world. We are starting to see some shifts in the transport sector. We are starting to see that electric vehicles are reaching sort of cost comparison, roughly equivalent of their non-electric counterparts. This is a trend we didn't expect to see until the early 2030s. It's already happened. It's already blown through. Power generation, transport. The thing I'm most excited, though, put the rest of this aside, the thing I am most excited about is what we are seeing in the healthcare sector. Because we know that when the health profession engages in these issues, when the health profession engages in issues beyond the four walls of a hospital, just like with tobacco, just like with vaccination, with the response to all sorts of infectious diseases and indeed COVID-19, the health profession has the ability to move mountains. So I want to turn my attention just at the end here to the healthcare system itself. We know roughly that globally healthcare is responsible for somewhere between 4 to 5% of emissions. Okay, 4.6% if you want to be precise. Now that graph on the left there, that's showing you emissions around the world over time, 2007 through to 2017. One thing that is particularly notable you'll see is the impact of China. There's largely a population effect that's going on there. There's also largely an effect that happens as a result of China's healthcare system being powered in large part by coal-fired power. But when you take a look at the rest of the world, you actually see that emissions are coming down a fair bit if we look at that over time. And we see that countries have taken fairly divergent pathways. Now, that graph on the right there, you're going to have to look a little bit closely. What it does there on the y-axis, we have a measure of a GBD measure of healthcare quality, the HAQ index. Along that x-axis, we have per capita healthcare sector emissions. Okay, so we're plotting the ability of a healthcare system to deliver healthcare against its emissions. Broadly, what you see, and we've only populated this with about 30 countries, but if we put all 196 countries up there, what we would see is that carbon is important to deliver good healthcare up to about 450 kilograms of CO2 per person, roughly. And at that point, it dissociates. At that point, you can be like the United States and put an enormous amount of carbon into the atmosphere from your healthcare system, and you will get no real benefit. out the other side. Now we see that reflected across a whole range of different areas, not just carbon. And it gets a little bit better than that. It turns out that if you really go and try, if you really go and look at all of the things that you might want to do to respond to climate change within the four walls of a hospital, whether you would like to talk about the commissioning of low carbon ambulances and what that might do for air pollution, whether you want to talk about buying more nutritious, healthier diets for the patients that are within that health system, but also buying them from local farmers so that your health system is investing in local communities. You're talking about less salt, you're talking about less sugar, but you're also talking about less carbon and a stronger circular economy. Or maybe we might want to talk about more digital care, digital redesign of healthcare, better investment in primary care. And there again, it turns out that for many of the chronic diseases that we might be facing in the future, climate change and the response to climate change offers an important series of solutions there. And we can see here, when the NHS tried to put all of that together, when it looked at renewable energy, when it looked at clinical redesign and changing sort of health systems so that they focus more on patients, when it looked at healthier diets and it looked at cleaner air, it turns out that the NHS was able to reduce its emissions dramatically. The NHS has been able to reduce its emissions by 18.5% from its baseline. That is an enormous, enormous achievement. And it's not alone. There are health systems all around the world that are starting to do this, all across Europe, all across North America. They're able to do this. And what is really important is, yes, they're able to reduce their emissions, but when you look closely, you realize they're able to do it at the same time as improving patient care, improving patient satisfaction, improving staff satisfaction, because they build it into their quality improvement, and staff really like engaging with this stuff. And they're able to do it at the same time as saving cost. It turns out that a lot of this stuff is about being smarter with our healthcare, about making sure that we are delivering better healthcare for our patients. And so that's why I'm excited. The health impacts of climate change, they are unequivocal, they are potentially irreversible, they are affecting populations around the world today. We have known about this for 30 years and we have broadly done nothing, and that has put lives and it has put livelihoods at risk. But just in the last 5 years, I think just in the last 4 or 5 years, we are starting to see an enormous growing momentum from health professionals around the world. We are starting to see the phase out of coal-fired power, and that is led by respiratory doctors saying, hey, this is bad for my patient's lungs, it's bad for strokes, it's bad for heart. We're starting to see an enormous response in the redesign of cities. New cities coming online are 48% more green. They have better access to urban green space, and they are designed around people as well, not just around cars. And just in the NHS, 25th of January, Simon Stevens, the chief executive of the NHS, said, do you know what? The future of healthcare has to change, and it has to change in its entirety. He declared that the NHS was going to become the world's first net zero health service. It was going to become the first health service in the entire world, 1.3 million employees to deliver a net zero health service. And he tasked a group to go away, think about how to do that and come back. The preliminary evidence we have is that, again, you can be a net zero health service that can do this in a way that improves patient care. It saves the NHS money so it can reinvest in prevention. It can reinvest in primary care. And it's good for healthcare today, but also good for healthcare in the future. Impact, delay, and the impact of the health profession globally to provide some optimism. Those are my 3 key messages. And thank you very, very much for having me here. Thank you to the ERA-EDTA for all the work that you have done in climate change. We have been watching. It's really, really impressive and really exciting. And Peter, thank you. Thank you personally. It's been a pleasure working with you. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Yeah, there he is. Okay, Nick, well, thank you very much for this clear message and this also inspiring message. I think the points you raised in the end of your presentation, that we as a medical doctors, as medical professionals, have a big task. The longer term vision of a net zero healthcare is an immense task to achieve. So thank you again. And in the meeting of the coming days, we will have some special sessions specifically addressing this subject. So thank you again. So I think now the last words of this opening ceremony are for our present President, Carmina Zoccali.
This is the end of this virtual ceremony. See you next year in Berlin for a live Congress.